They can read your email. They can collect every document. They can look at your contact book. They can turn the location services on. They can see anything that is on that phone instantly and send it back home to the mothership.
Edward Snowden, the man who famously leaked U.S. government secrets to show U.S. surveillance was far broader than the government claimed, now speaking out in a new interview with Brian Williams and in a new book. Now, Snowden has been debated as everything from a whistleblower to a leaker to a traitor. Tonight, he's also a defendant in a brand new U.S. government lawsuit over his new book. The feds say, among other things, the book violates his past agreements with the government. Now, this new suit is separate from the larger criminal case against Snowden. He was indicted during the Obama administration. He remains in exile in Russia. Tonight, Brian Williams joins us with some extra special insights. Williams traveled on a reporting trip to Moscow in 2014 for Snowden's first ever American television interview. Williams also interviewed him again in this special on the 11th hour. Let's look at both of these newsworthy interviews.
I'm not supported by the Russian government. I'm not taking money from the Russian government. I'm not a spy. It was never my intention to end up in Russia. If the United States government is so concerned about Russia, right, shouldn't they be happy for me to leave?
Do you see yourself as a patriot?
I do. When my government wants me to help, I will be there. I'm a human being. I could make mistakes. I could make the wrong call. But the reality is the situation determined that this needed to be told to the public. Things have changed, and I would do it again. When people say, why don't you go home and face the music, I say, you have to understand that the music is not an open court and a fair trial.
Do you predict you will, at some point, live out your life and die in the United States?
I think I will return.
Brian Williams is here, NBC, friend and colleague, first time on the beat. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
What do you learn from the interview, and is he the same guy?
First of all, and that was the first time I'd seen that specific matchup. It's been a long 5 years, and yesterday I just thought I'd take a flyer and say, as part of a punishment package, what if we gave you a laptop and put you to work hardening our elections against your current hosts, the Russians, which he agreed to. He is older, wiser, maybe cagier on some fronts. You know, all the security professionals we have talked to say, don't kid yourselves. The Russians know when he's brushing his teeth, when he's showering. They know what he's eating, what he's doing, who he's talking to. There's no way to beat them at this game.
Well, you mentioned that, and that goes to some of his technological fortitude, which you discussed. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
I actually open it up before I use it. I perform a kind of surgery on it to physically desolder or sort of melt the metal connections that hold the microphone on the phone. And I physically take this off. I remove the camera for the phone, and then I close it back up. I seal it up. And then if I need to make a phone call, I will attach an external microphone on it. And this is just so if the phone is sitting there and I'm not making a call, it cannot hear me.
You're not really paranoid if they're after you.
Wow. I, for one, have never opened a phone and desoldered either the microphone or the camera. I made the point in the interview that most of us have freely given of some civil liberties and freedoms because if you're innocent, CCTV cameras in all our major cities can be your friend. If you're innocent, perhaps they can catch a crime being committed against you, though I get the point that we have given up freedom steadily, especially since 9/11.
He also made the case in this interview to you, and he makes it in his book, that he had impact. Because while there's significant debate over what he did and the consequences for it, it is true that after his revelations, Congress stepped up and did something that we all know they almost never do, which is out of the blue, pass a new law to curtail government power, the USA Freedom Act. What did you think about that argument in your interview in the book, that he's saying, hey, even Congress reacted to me?
He, I guess, is justifiably proud of that. You could argue that the impact it had is greater than the sheer number of people who read what he did and what he released. This was the start of our drowning era in data and media, and very few people went back and said, okay, what is this bulk data program, and read the particulars of it. It's a bad look for him right now. Of all the places to live on this planet, what a bad look to live where he's living, and yet he is not ready to undergo the punishment phase should he, step on U.S. soil again.
Well, and you make such an important point, because this was back then pre-Assange in the public's understanding of how Russia was weaponizing information. We're talking tonight at a time where I'm sure in your broadcast you may touch on this. The Senate is staying open late tonight to deal with guns. You have been covering these stories for so long in really America's living room. We wanted to ask you about that, particularly because you've covered so many heartbreaking mass shootings. So let's take a look at that, and I want to ask you about it on the other side.
Okay.
Today was the largest single mass shooting in United States history, that it happened in a school.
Good evening from the campus of Virginia Tech. This is easily the saddest place in our nation tonight. Killed 20 small children and several adults. Shots were fired inside a club called Pulse. Florida mourns and Washington fails to act. The staggering cruelty and the staggering toll of the dead and wounded in Las Vegas.
What do you take from it? And as an American anchor going out over and over, how do you keep yourself together when you're dealing with so much tragedy, so many parents burying their children?
We've said this on the air. You're fighting the sameness of coverage, even though obviously no two losses or venues or tragedies are alike. When you fly into these places, and often because we have resources, we are on a plane in minutes. I landed in Aurora, Colorado. The scene there was still very fresh. Virginia Tech, up in Connecticut at Sandy Hook. These are, for that moment in time, the saddest places in our country. And the notion of a life being able to change like that, every person you meet, every story they tell. I was just talking to her. I just sent him or her off to school. There's nothing like it. There's no corollary anywhere in the world. There's no comparison anywhere in the world. This is purely ours.
Yeah. And it's striking when you think this is just something that is, and people can debate it and figure it out, but it is how we live now, and it is just a drumbeat.
It is how we live now. Let's see what the U.S. Senate does, if anything. I can't believe you didn't ask me what my favorite Annie Lennox song is.
Well, I always like to turn to something positive. What do you have here?
There it is.
Why Annie Lennox? You're an Annie Lennox fan.
Achingly beautiful song. Yep, she's a terrific talent.
Well, I appreciate your interest in everything. You do pay attention. Brian,
you for having me,
great to have you here on The Beat. We'll be watching tonight at the 11th hour.
Long-time viewer, first-time caller.
Every night, 11 p.m. Eastern. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.